I think I've only got 3 more cups. Hold on. Mr. Clay and, no, I'm fine. 1 second. Sounds great.
I would love to try your tea.
Please let me know what you think.
It is delicious.
Only grows here. We've been tending this garden for generations.
You're drinking dead people tea?
Aren't we all?
Yeah, that's very true. But you're like cultivating dead people for good tea.
Aren't we all? Let me know, what can I do for you? Usually when people come here, it is because of some great tragedy. How may I alleviate your pain?
Oh, well, Herr Clay, we come to you with a great tragedy.
We recently lost one of our friends. And we
Who come here usually have.
we aren't here to bury him. He's already in the ground. But we've come to avenge him, and we were hoping to find some help.
This is a place where we take the dearly departed people who have done well and people who have lived good lives, and we put them into earth that has been touched by the Wild Mother, and in turn she grants them with beauty and splendor and sometimes tea. Honestly, I don't think I've really had enough experience to have an opinion on that. I'm a good gardener.
What do you grow other than dead tea?
I grow lilies, I grow Mushrooms, moss.
Mushrooms. Dead moss.
Yeah.
You don't leave here very much, do you?
It's been a while. I wasn't, I've been on my own for a while. It makes you get a little, rambly. Have you ever been in nature? Yes. Violence is extremely natural. Somewhere there's a plant that needs some compost, and I'm happy to make some more. Make people happy.
Good morning. How do you do this? Yeah. Yeah, Charlie Brown dancing sounds a lot better than whatever the fuck that actually was. I don't know what I was doing. Morning, Lady Temeraire. Morning, Cameron. Close you. Close you. I still have to answer you. Ah, yes. I remember now. Hey, what's up, genius? I am still alive. Still alive like GLaDOS. I'm making a note here. Huge success. Oh, should probably show you what I'm doing. Chapter 30. Chapter 30. They did not speak of what they had seen while they made their way back out of the valley, for they did not know for certain if there were any more guards around. It was a long walk, made longer by the fact that the sun had now gone down and they had to pick their way through. Lauren's mind had to pick their way through the darkness. Lauren's mind raced all the while, wondering what they should do. When she had first heard of Yawamba, she had not imagined it would be so grand a place, so impregnable. The thought of trying to conquer the fortress with only 6 of them, 8 if they counted Jem and Annis, now seemed laughable. But what was the alternative? Returning to Ammon? Kal would be furious with her, and she would not even have accomplished what she came here to do, which was the only thing that might stay his wrath now. At last they reached the place where Chet and the others waited for them. They all came forwards and gathered in a group, but Lauren held up a hand to forestall their questions.
There will be time enough to tell you what we saw, but now we must return to camp. Jem and Annis are likely worried sick, and we should not leave them alone overnight in any case.
And she would not say another word until they had all mounted their horses and begun to ride east. Shiun had them remain quiet until they were out of the valley mouth and back near the main road again, but then Chet turned to Lauren.
"Did you find Yawamba?" "Yes," said Lauren. The others looked to her with interest. "It is a mighty fortress, and from what we could tell, it is well garrisoned. Even if Kal brought all the mystics in Ammon, I doubt he could take it by force."
Naya looked at her sharply.
"It is good, then, that we mean to use subterfuge instead." "I do not see how," said Lauren. "Then you intend to give up?" said Naya. "We have come too far for that."
Lauren shook her head.
"Let us discuss this when we have returned, and we can think upon it properly. Then ride faster."
Naya obeyed her own command at once, savagely nudging her horse into a canter in the moonslide. Jem and Annis came to meet them with palpable relief when they reached the camp at last.
We were worried,
said Annis.
we feared you had been discovered and taken.
I'm glad to say we were not, said Chet. Not yet, at any rate, though I think Naya has some mad scheme to ensure that is how we meet our end.
Do not make snide comments at me, boy,
snarled Naya.
If you have counsel to give, then let us hear it.
Enough, said Lauren.
All will be heard in turn.
They sat around the fire Jem and Annis had built. Lauren and Naya described Yawamba, with Shion interjecting every so often with some description of the place and the guards placed around it. When they had finished, Chet spread his hands.
It seems plain to me that there is little hope of entering the fortress,
he said.
We should return to Ammon and let Cal deal with it. I do not doubt that he will already have sent a host this way,
said Lauren.
Jormund will have reached him by now, and Cal will have wasted no time assembling his forces. But it is as I said before, even all the mystics at his command cannot hope to besiege the place, not without tremendous loss.
But neither can we hope to conquer it on our own, said Chet.
We do not need to conquer the fortress,
said Naya.
We only need to capture Damaris. That is why we have come all this way. Lauren and I have proven our worth already. The two of us can drag this merchant from her hole.
Lauren frowned as she looked into the fire. It was possible, she supposed, but Yawamba was not the Golden Manor. It was not in the city, for one thing. Escape would not be so easy, and neither would their entry, for she had no faintest idea how to sneak into the place. There were no rooftops for Jem to lead them across.
We cannot pass the main gate without detection,
she said slowly.
That is the first obstacle. Detection.
Slowly. She said slowly.
That is the first obstacle.
You speak as though this is something you are considering, said Chet, incredulous.
Do not tell me you have begun to agree with this mad course.
But Naya ignored him and nodded eagerly at Lauren.
Shion can scout the place tomorrow. She can find us a back entrance. The stronghold is built into a mountain. There must be more than one way in, even if we must tunnel through the rock. I could help you there with magic,
said Weath.
But I cannot withhold my own concerns. Even once we gain entry, it seems to me that we have but a slim chance of success. Damaris will be well guarded, and extracting her will be no easy task. Who agreed to come because they thought this would be easy?
Snapped Naya.
If you wish to turn back once you have gotten us inside the stronghold, I will not stop you. The Nightblade and I can manage on our own.
You advocate for madness, said Chet.
The wisest course would be to make for Ammon. At the least we should remain here, waiting for Cal's arrival, and watch the stronghold in case Damaris should try to escape it.
That did seem wise to Lauren, and for a moment her heart leaped. It was safer, certainly, and she could not deny the pit of fear that formed in her stomach at the thought of sneaking into Yawamba. But Naya shook her head scornfully.
There must be other ways out of Yawamba, just as there are other ways in,
she said.
If Damaris learns that a host from Ammon has arrived in the area, If Damaris learns that a host from Ammon has arrived in the area, doubtless there is some tunnel in the mountains that she can use to evade it. Our only hope is taking her by surprise.
Hope? Scoffed Chet.
I do not see hope in any part of this. Do you not? Then let me explain it more clearly, boy. Underrealm stands on the brink of war. Damaris' capture and execution could quell the flames of rebellion. The High King could declare open war tomorrow. She may have done so already, and word of it has not reached us yet. But we here, now, just we six, can put an end to it.
Naya's words awoke a flame in Lauren's heart. She remembered what Enelin had told her upon the seat, that the preservation of the 9 kingdoms was the greatest purpose there was. Naya spoke the truth now. Ending Damaris' string of crimes could help bring that about. Lauren could do it. and if Naya guessed correctly that Damaris had a means of escape, Lauren might be the only one who could. But more than that, she could end the nightmares, or at least remove the power of them. Mayup the cavern from her dreams awaited her in Yawamba. Mayup Gregor was there too. But if they succeeded, if Damaris was captured and brought before the king's law, Lauren need no longer fear the visions that came in her sleep. For a moment, her mind quailed at the thought of Chet's corpse and the corpses of Annis and Jem. But she had seen them die in Dahab as well, and that had not come to pass. "You do not see the future," she told herself once again. "And you were a self-important fool if you ever believed it so." "We must do it," she said quietly. They all stopped and looked at her. Chet's expression fell into despair, and she knew he could see her determination. "If there is more than a fool's hope of success, we must try," she went on. "Naya is right. All of Underrealm is papyrus, awaiting only an ember to ignite it. We can douse the flames before they erupt. That is the duty of the Mystic Order, and it is my duty as the Nightblade." "But we cannot do it on our own," said Chet. "Cal's force is not enough," said Lauren. "And even if it were, how long would it take? If he set out from Ammon with his whole host the very day that Jormund reached him, still the march would take more than a month. It might take 2. Then they would lay siege to Yawamba. Another 2 months, mayhap more. The place looked as though a dozen could repel an army for a year. Another 2 months, mayhap the place...
Big ol' pops.
The place looked as though a dozen could repel an army for a year. A dozen could repel an army for a year. Could repel an army for a year. An army for a year. It would become a symbol for the traitors, said Weeth quietly. She stared into her hands, her shoulders slumped, as though she had just realized a terrible truth. Our mission, our true mission, would be a failure, for it would only drag the war on. Yet if we succeed, we few, said Lauren. What if the tale should spread throughout Underrealm that one small band of the High King's spies captured Damaris from her impregnable home and brought her to justice? What traitor would dare to stand against the crown then? The camp was silent. The answer was obvious to them all. Naya's bright teeth shone in the firelight. Then we are agreed. Lauren and I will infiltrate Yawamba and bring Damaris forth. Once we have escaped with her, the rest of you... No, said Chet. Chet? Lauren gave him a warning look. Let me speak, he said sharply. I know, or I have learned on our journeys, that you will not be swayed once you have decided something, Lauren. But in some matters, I will not change my mind either. If you were determined to do this, I am coming with you. And I, said Jem at once. He beamed at Uzo as though he expected the young man to chime in with agreement. Uzo raised his brows and remained silent. Annis gave a nervous titter of laughter. I hope it is understood by all when I do not volunteer, for I would only get in the way. Of course, Annis, said Lauren. And as for Jem and Chet, I will not deny that a part of me wants to forbid you to go. Your lives are dearer to me than my own. But I cannot command you to remain behind in good conscience, when you have urged me so strongly not to go in the first place. Chet urged you, you mean? Muttered Jem, so quiet that Lauren barely heard it. But Naya shook her head. That is unwise, Lauren. If we should be caught in the fortress, these boys will not keep us from death.
We should not risk any more lives than we must." "You speak as though I am yours to command," said Chet. "I am not, nor am I yours, Lauren. I obey only myself, and if you do not wish for me to come with you, you shall have to tie me to a tree." "Do not tempt me, boy," growled Naya. Lauren glared at her. "Chet speaks the truth. He is no mystic, and so he is not yours to command." Naya drew back, agape. "You cannot tell me you wish to endanger him." "My wish is not important," said Lauren. "I know him well enough to know that he will not hamper the success of our mission, and so if he wishes to come, he can. Or am I no longer in command?" The mystic's nostrils flared, and her chest heaved with quick, angry breaths. When she spoke, the words came terse and angry. "Very well, Nightblade, but might I have a word alone?" Without waiting for an answer, she stood and walked away from the campfire. Chet watched her go, still frowning. "You do not need to go with her," he said. "We gain nothing by being angry and divided," said Lauren. "If I can soothe her temper, it will be better for us all." So saying, she rose and went off in the direction Naya had gone. She found her a ways off, when the fire had receded to little more than a glow in the distance. Naya was pacing back and forth before a wide mahogany tree, and when she saw Lauren approaching, she slammed a fist into the side of it. "You let that boy sway your mind too easily," she said. "Few appreciate a good lover more than I, but it is a girl and not a woman who makes decisions with her loins instead of her head." Fury seized Lauren, and she spoke without thought. "Is that so? I think you have done nothing else since we first met." Naya stopped dead, eyes narrowing and fists clenching at her sides. For a moment, Lauren was afraid to move. She half thought that Naya meant to attack her. But then a smile split Naya's scowl, and she snickered. "Mayhap you speak fairly," she said. "I can admit to my own distraction, but when it comes to our mission, I put such thoughts aside. I worry that you have not learned to do so." "And I grow tired of hearing that," said Lauren. "You, Chet, Cal, it seems everyone thinks I am a little girl, swaying this way and that like a willow in a gale. Just because I was silent while all gave counsel does not mean I was waiting to find something to agree with. I listened, and when I came to my own decision, I gave it." Naya studied her for a moment. Then she took a step closer, her demeanor changing entirely. Lauren no longer feared the woman's temper, but grew nervous for an entirely different reason. "I had not thought of that," said Naya softly, "and it was wrong of me. I did not give you enough credit. You are young, and sometimes I forget that an old soul lurks behind those eyes." The mystic reached up and brushed away a lock of Lauren's hair. Lauren fought to keep her knees from shaking. "I accept your apology," she said, keeping her tone reserved. "For a long while now, I have sought to be entrusted with a command," said Naya. "Now that one has been given to me, even one so small, I suppose I sometimes forget you are the one in charge here. I was a fool to call you a little girl. You're a woman grown, of course. That is why I cannot stop desiring you. Yet you should stop, as I have told you often enough before." Lauren tried to sound indignant, but she could not even speak forcefully enough to convince herself. "At least you should make up your mind about it. I feel as though one moment you scorn me, and the next you whisper honeyed words." "That is because the distance between here and the hub has increased both my impatience and my hunger." "It has not increased mine." "That is a lie." They both knew it was true. Naya took another step forwards, so that they were almost touching. They were out of sight of the camp. Lauren knew no one would come to disturb them. Almost she surrendered to her instincts. Almost she reached out for the woman. She even lifted her hands to do it. And then at the last moment she regained control. She put her hands on Naya's shoulders instead, gently pushing her away. "I love Chet," she said. "You must stop this."
Why? Said Naya. She cupped Lauren's cheek. Neither of us wants me to. Because you are trying to make me do something that I know I would regret. He has suffered enough because of me. I will not cause him more pain. Then say nothing of it to him, said Naya. I will not. But those words doused the fire in Lauren at last, and she reached up to pull Naya's hand away. No, that is not who I am. I value honor. Naya scowled. So says the former thief. Former, said Lauren. And even then, I never meant to steal anyone's affection. If that were true, then you would never have looked at me the way you did when we met, said Naya. She pushed past Lauren and made for the camp. Past Lauren.
Clicky click.
Past Lauren and made for the camp. It was a long while before Lauren's heart had stilled enough that she could follow.
All right, I gotta run my kids to the bus. They're probably already going. Where the frick is my dad? So while this exports, I'm gonna go do that. I will leave you with some autumn orange music to keep you company, and I will return in about 15 minutes. See you then.
I'm ready to leave. It's gonna be a little much, but I think I can do it. I'm ready. Everything's telling me that I should stick around and see where you're headed. I think that's where I'm supposed to be. This is pretty good from a certain perspective. I mean, you think about it, bad things happen to people every day, and then you have a bunch of people who care about you so much that they come and save you, fix it, defeat a great evil. I mean, nothing this good ever happens. This is great. good. That's not how this works. I mean, things that you do are good or bad, but people are just people. People come and they talk a lot.
When they're grieving.
Yeah, and you listen a lot. I don't know much, but I know people, and I know things that aren't people. There's a lot more, apparently, and,
You seem to pick up on the stuff that's not said.
I mean, you have to.
They're not yet removed from the cross, whether it be by luck or superstition. There is the white snow dappled, multicolored coat of Mollywog Tea.
Something will be here.
What did you just do?
I made the earth remember him. Something will be here. Well, it's more than a thank you. I feel that you have to be free, so that you can finally pay your debt.
This is me paying my debt.
No, this is you hiding from your debt. You're a man who is afraid of what you owe. I understand. That's okay. This is not your debt. Your debt lies elsewhere. I know these things.
I think perhaps it's destiny. Do you believe in destiny?
No, but
But you dream about islands and you go to them.
we back. All right. Oof. Well... Got hit with a fresh batch of emotions while I was out, and a song came on my Pandora that just absolutely wrecks me every time. And of course, you know, I've been if you've been noticing my stream times, I've been pushing it a bit hard when it comes to sleep recently. So naturally, being tired already and then hearing this song, I was just like, oh no. Emotional damage. Yeah. Yeah. We're almost caught up on the month's targets, though. So I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Chapter 31. The next day...
Excuse me.
Chapter 31. The next day, they sent Shiun back into the mountains to scout Yawamba and see if she could find another route inside. The rest did not wait idly, but moved the camp. They took themselves west, across the main road and into the jungle at the mouth of the valley. There was a sort of cleft in the mountains there, where behind a rise there was a wide clearing. There they erected their tents once more, though Naya commanded them to light no fires. Shortly after midday, Shiun returned with good news.
"There is a path," she said. "It runs up the backside of the mountain, and it is perilous. The last part cannot be climbed without Weath, but it will bring us straight to the top of the walls, and from there we can enter the stronghold with ease."
"That is our party, then," said Lauren. "All but Annis and Uzo, who will stay to guard the camp."
"And happily enough," said Uzo. "If you succeed, I confess I will be jealous of the glory you will have earned yourselves. But I have never found anything onerous about guard duty, especially when the alternative is to thrust my head between the very jaws of death."
Lauren smirked, but the expression quickly died. "If we do not succeed, you must return to Ammon as swiftly as you can. Take Annis with you and keep her safe. Her information about the stronghold will be of immense help to Cal."
Uzo nodded. "Of course. And I should say, in case I do not get another chance, that I am sorry if I've been coarse with you during the journey.
I thought I rode with a young girl who had been raised above her station by fortune alone. I see now that I traveled beside a brave warrior instead." She flushed and shook her head. "No warrior, but only a spy. As luck would have it, however, that is just what was required. They say that even a dull knife is better for cutting than a golden spoon." His teeth flashed in a smile. "They do not say that in this kingdom, but it is true enough." Their meal that night was a somber affair, made more so because they could not cook, and so had to eat the salted rations from their packs, which had begun to run low. "If we return, you and I should go hunting," Lauren told Chet. "It will make our journey to Ammon much easier." Chet looked at her oddly. "You say if. Are you that doubtful we shall come back?" She shook her head at once. "Of course not. I only meant I was not thinking." He looked away and did not answer. Uzo volunteered to stand watch the whole night, since he would be able to sleep the next day while the rest of them could not. Lauren was in the midst of readying for bed and wondering how she would be able to sleep when Annis approached her. "Lauren," she said quietly, "might I speak with you?" "Of course. What is it?" Annis looked around the camp, her gaze around the camp. Annis looked around. Annis looked around the camp, her gaze lingering longest on Jem. "Alone?" Lauren frowned, but she let herself be led off away from the camp. Annis took her out through the cleft in the mountain, into the open jungle and to a small stream that ran south, not far away from the main road. The sun had long passed from sight behind the mountains that loomed over them, but its light still filled the sky. Here in the foothills they had a clear view of the land to the east, and just near the horizon, Lauren could make out the edges of the mountain's shadow. The glow of sunlight there was like a soft golden blanket being drawn back and away from her, over the edge of the world and out of sight. Together they stood and watched it slowly creeping away, until Annis cleared her throat. "Let us sit on the bank of the stream," she said, her tone too airy, too light. "I want to put my feet in the water. I can hardly believe how long it is since the last I bathed." "Very well," said Lauren. She was more curious than ever about what troubled Annis, but it seemed the girl would not speak of it until she was ready. So they sat together upon the bank beside the stream and pulled off their boots. The water was not too very cold, despite the winter. Uzo had told them that it never snowed in Feldamar, and all of the them that it never had told them that it never snowed in Feldamar, and all of the south-flowing rivers carried water from the north, where it remained hot and sunny all year round. "This is a strange land, but I find it very beautiful," said Annis, looking out into the gathering darkness between the trees. "I prefer the birchwood, but I am happy to have seen it," said Lauren. "Together, you and I have wandered forests, grasslands, great rivers and jungles, and even the ocean. All that is left now is to visit a desert to get the ocean. All that is left now is to visit a desert together. Mayhap one day we could journey to Idris," said Annis, her eyes all alight. "I have heard it is an exotic place. When all of this is over, I should love to go there with you." But then her expression fell, and she looked away. "When all of this is over." "Annis, what is it?" said Lauren. "I wish to hear what troubles you, but I must rise before the dawn." "Of course. Forgive me." Annis drew a deep breath. "I do not want Jem to go with you. I want you to command him to stay." Lauren's heart sank. "I cannot," she said. "Or rather, I will not. I have tried it before, with both of you, in fact.
You each made it plain how much you hate it. But you are all wandering into danger, danger that could overcome even grown warriors. He and I are both still children, and though he practices his swordplay, he is no fighter. I worry that he will try to join a battle, and one should break out, and then something will... We both know why you were worried, Annis, said Lauren irritably. You worry that if he does not return, then you will never have told him how you feel, and will never know if he felt the same. The solution is simple. Speak to him. You are an eloquent girl when you do not let your tongue run away with your mind. You know that I love you as my sister, but frankly I have grown tired of how reluctant you are to even broach the subject with him. To her surprise, Annis's eyes brimmed with tears, and she gave a sniff. She bowed her head and turned away. Mortified, Lauren sat up and placed a hand on her back. Annis, I'm sorry. I spoke too harshly. No, you spoke true enough, said Annis, voice trembling. Only, it is not that I am afraid to tell Jem. It is just that I wish I did not have to. Lauren frowned, but as she thought upon it, she understood, and her expression softened. He has never fawned over you the way you have over him. Annis fixed her with a glare, but her brimming tears robbed it of any bite. I do not fawn. Annis fixed her with a glare. Fixed her with a glare, but her brimming tears robbed it of any bite. I do not fawn, but otherwise you are right. He has never looked at me in that way. I keep hoping to see it in his eyes, the way I see it when Chet looks at you. He looked that way from the first moment I met him, and I was there as the two of you fell deeper and deeper into love. It was effortless. Of course it was, you great fool, said Lauren gently. Chet and I have known each other our entire lives. He loved me even before I left the forest, before I met you. Everyone is different. Every love is different. He never told me how he felt, for he never needed to. But he is not Jem, and you are not me. So free yourself from both our misery, and speak to him. Annis's eyes shone, but not with tears. You are right, she said, quiet as a prayer. I will tell him. And I will tell him that if he does not return from Yawamba, I will storm it. And I will tell him that if he does not... Tell him that if he does not return from Yawamba, I will storm in there and drag him out myself. Lauren laughed. Good. Then go. The girl shot to her feet, but paused when Lauren remained sitting. Are you not coming? I will in a moment, said Lauren, but my feet are enjoying the water too much. I wish to relax a little while longer, for I think I shall not have another chance in some time. Annis smiled at her and set off into the trees. Lauren's face fell the moment the girl's back was turned, and she looked down at her feet as they dangled in the stream. He loved me even before I left the forest. Lauren had said the words without thinking, but why had she not said, we loved each other? She loved Chet. She knew that she did. But she had known for some time in the back of her mind that it was not the same as his love for her. If it were, she could never have manipulated him so easily on the day she left her home. If it were, she would not think of Naya the way she did now, and the proof of that could be found in Weeth. Weeth and Chet had become fast friends, and Lauren could see how attractive the woman was, with her short copper hair and lithe, supple figure. Lauren could remember one or two occasions when Chet's gaze had lingered upon her a moment longer than was proper. Yet never once had Lauren suspected that Chet might harbor any intent towards Weeth beyond friendship. But Chet seemed to have more than an inkling of the connection between Lauren and Naya. It made him jealous, and no matter how Lauren denied it,
she knew it was for good reason. Even now, Lauren could not stop thinking of how easy it would be to secretly draw Naya out of the camp. They could be alone for one night, mayhap the last night of both their lives. What had she told Annis? "You worry that if he does not return, then you will never have told him how you feel." The same could be said for Lauren herself. Always she had denied what she felt for Naya, no matter how the mystic goaded her. And now she had told Annis to be bold, to act as fear had always prevented her from acting before. Yet she would not do the same, even though she might never have another chance. She remembered her heated argument with Naya just 2 nights before. Again she saw Naya standing just before her, almost pressed against her. When her mind played across it, the memory of the woman's scent flooded her nostrils. A stone lay by Lauren's hand. She picked it up and flung it hard into the water, where it broke the surface with a loud plop. "Darkness take the woman," she muttered, "and darkness take me as well." She drew her feet from the water and pulled her boots on, making her way slowly back to camp. Slowly back to camp.
Chapter 31 done. Excuse me. Good Lord.
Chet tried to be patient with her, but after she snapped at him on the 4th day, he loosed his own irritation. Chapter 32.
Huh.
Chapter 30. Chapter 32. Sleep did not come to Lauren for a long time. Chet had rolled over into the corner of the tent before she entered, and he did not move as she undressed and crawled beneath their blanket. She rolled back and forth, trying to get comfortable and drift off. There was a lump beneath the tent, and she kept trying to shift around it to find flat ground again. But at last she had to admit that the lump was only an excuse, for she had slept on far worse terrain during her journeys. "Close your eyes, woman," grumbled Chet. Lauren sighed. "I am not the only one who cannot sleep, then." He turned over, and in the pale moon's light through the tent, she saw his eyes glinting. "Of course I cannot sleep. I'm terrified of what tomorrow could bring. Do you not feel the same way?" "I suppose." "Close your eyes, woman," grumbled Chet. Lauren sighed. "I am not the only one who cannot sleep, then." "Who cannot sleep, then." He turned over, and in the pale moon's light through the tent, she saw his eyes glinting. "Of course I cannot sleep. I'm terrified of what... I cannot sleep."
not sleep. I'm terrified of what tomorrow could bring. Do you not feel the same way? I suppose so, she said with a shrug. But on the other hand, I am somewhat used to that feeling. If that were true, sleep would come easy. Yet I think I understand. Sleep. If that were true, sleep would come easy.
Hey, missed you arriving, Beepend. Enjoy your lurk.
If that were true, sleep would come easy. Yet I think I understand your meaning. I do not feel as though I should be frightened. I was there for the fall of Northwood, and you and I faced Rogan more than once. I was there when assassins came for the Lord Prince, and I was in the battle on the seat. Yet somehow this feels different. It is different, said Lauren. All of those times were a surprise. The danger came from nowhere, and then it ended. This might be the first time you have planned to march into mortal peril. Chet snickered. I suppose that is right enough. Lauren felt herself relax at his laugh. She had not heard it in some time. Cautiously, she scooted closer to him, and he did the same, placing his head on her shoulder. She curled her arm around him, fingers idly stroking his arm, and he laid a hand across her stomach. The feeling of his skin loosened her taut muscles even more. It felt natural between them again. It felt right. Suddenly the doubts she had had upon the bank of the stream faded away, and they seemed silly in her memory. This was how it had been when she first came to know that she loved him, beneath the boughs of the birchwood, and then when their trysts began upon the seat. Then she remembered Naya, and the light in the woman's eyes when they looked at her. Comfort fell away, and she felt like a fraud with Chet in her arms. Chet, you have not been wrong about Naya, she said quietly. I know you have suspected her for some time, and I dismissed it, but I should not have. Naya would have me if she could. She has said as much, subtly and in ways that were less so. He was still for a while, and then he pushed himself up on his elbow. In the midst of his silhouette, his eyes searched hers. And? What came of it? Nothing, said Lauren. But then she realized that that was not strictly true. She kissed me, twice, in Dahab. She could feel him tense. Why would you? I did not, said Lauren quickly. She did it without asking. He pushed himself up still farther. What? Lauren, that is only a step away from taking someone against their will, from breaking the High King's harshest law. That is not the way of it, said Lauren. I know how it must sound, but do you remember the first time we kissed, on the shores of Dorsey, just before we sailed for the seat? Of course, he said quietly. That memory will never fade. I did not ask you before I kissed you, said Lauren. Yet you knew, he said. You knew I loved you. How? You had never said the words, nor had I. We had never spoken of it at all. And when we began to... That is, when we became... She flushed and wondered if the moon's light would reveal it. Flushed and wondered if the moon's light would... If the moon's light would reveal it. Even when we did more than kiss, we did not speak of it then. You told me you loved me for the first time just before we left the seat. We had shared a bed for weeks before then. He thought about that for a moment, but then he shook his head. I do not understand.
She's all embarrassed.
I do not understand, Lauren.
You knew my desires, and I knew yours. And so the only way I can think that what Naya did was no crime is if she also knew your desires, and she was no crime is if she also
There you are, you little fucker.
if she also knew your desires, and she was right. She stared up at him. Shame burned in her breast, but she did not look away. I see, he said quietly. He began to turn away, to roll towards his side of the tent again. Stop, Chet, said Lauren, pulling him back. I do not want to be with Naya. You just said otherwise. So what is the truth? The truth is that I am here, with you. That is not an answer. Yes. Yes, I would lay with Naya if it were not for you. It thrilled her to say it out loud. Her skin rose to gooseflesh at the words, and she grew quick of breath. But then she raised a hand to cup his cheek. But that is something I would merely enjoy. A momentary pleasure, like drinking a cup of wine. Between such a fancy and what I want, what I truly desire, a wide gulf stretches. Much would have to change in this world before I would attempt to leap it. He did not answer for a moment. Lauren realized she was holding her breath, and slowly she let it out. And slowly she let it out. And then, when he spoke, she heard a small smile in his voice. So, you do not fancy me, then? She gave a frustrated growl and slapped his arm. Be silent, you idiot. I love you, Chet. I will not lay with anyone else, but that does not mean I can promise I will never have desires. Can you tell me in truth that you have never thought of another, Mayup Weath? Anyone can see that she has a fine figure, said Chet. But there my thoughts remain. I will never lay with her. And I will never lay with Naya, said Lauren. It is not precisely the same, for I feel a way about her that you do not feel towards Weath. But I have chosen love over desire. I hope you know that. I do, he whispered. I only wish that my love was enough for you, that it did not leave you wanting another, or feeling this deep need to pursue the aims of the High King. That is another matter entirely, and you know it. Of course it is, but it comes from the same place in your heart. I believe you when you say you will be true, yet even so I am not enough. There is your quest, your mission. Can you not give that up for me as well? No, she said flatly, and you should not ask it of me, not if you love me in truth. He paused to consider that. I understand your sense of duty, he said at last. It is a quality I admire, in others as well as yourself. It is only that I do not see anything for you beyond this war. If I were in your position, I might do the same as you have done, but always I would dream of a quiet home in the woods, where I might spend my days after the war, if indeed it becomes a war at all. Do you want that, Lauren? I do not know. It sounds fine enough, I suppose, but when I think of it, I do not feel the yearning for it that is plain in your voice. That is what I thought, he said, sighing. Is there even a time after the war in your mind? And what do you see there? She sat up, and he rose from his elbow to sit beside her. She took his hands into her own and traced a finger along the back of his hand. I have no easy answer for you. I cannot say what I know you want me to say, How can I know what the distant future holds when I cannot even know what will happen to you and me tomorrow? But right now, I love you, and your love is dearer to me than any honor the High King could bestow. Can that be enough? At least for now? He turned his hand over to grasp hers, and lifted it to his mouth to kiss her fingers one by one. It can, he murmured. Lauren kissed him, and they lay down again together, still and content. Soon she was asleep, a dreamless sleep more sound than any she had had since leaving Ammon.
Look at these people. Look at these people talking about their feelings. Look at them communicating openly and honestly with each other. It's frankly indecent, honestly. But that's what you get in Underrealm. Only the most explicit content. I mean, that is just like, they are bearing everything. So sleep, baby, sleep. What are you waiting for? The morning's almost here. No, it's only just a dream. Sleep, baby, sleep. I'm next to you. Oh my God, Twitch. What are you doing?
Chapter 33. Uzo went about the camp to wake them all before dawn. One by one they came out of their tents and stood stretching in the crisp air. Lauren caught herself looking at each of her companions. Often they returned her gaze, but no one spoke a word. They were silent, too, as they readied themselves for the journey. The mystics buckled their swords at their waists and donned their shirts of chain. Lauren left her bow, Albern's gift, for it would be of little use in the fortress, and only by terrible misfortune would she need it before then. Naya had her sword and a brace of knives at her belt. She caught Lauren staring and winked. Lauren smiled and shook her head. Annis rose to see them off, though of course she would not be coming with them. Lauren noticed at once that Annis and Jem would hardly look at each other, and each flinched when the other spoke.
They kept a wide distance between themselves as well. Lauren groaned inwardly. Whatever Annis had told Jem the night before, it did not appear to have gone well, but she could waste little thought on that now. She would have to ask what happened after their journey to Uwamba, if indeed there was an afterwards in which they could speak with each other. She went to midnight just before they left and stroked the mare's muzzle. "You will be safe here," she said. "If I do not return, I am sorry, but that only means you will belong to Annis. You like her." Midnight blew a wet snort into Lauren's face, making her laugh. Shiun led them from the camp and into the jungle. They paused at the mouth of the valley while she went ahead to search it, making sure no new guards had been posted there since last they came. She soon returned to wave them on. The sky had only just begun to turn gray. For a long while she led them on the same path they had taken the last time, but when she reached the place where they had seen the guards, she took them in another direction, right instead of left, up the face of the northern ridge rather than the south. Lauren wondered at the change, but she did not speak. Shiun had been out all day scouting the path, and the woman was like an elf in... Shiun had been out all day scouting the path. All day scouting the path, and the woman was like an elf in the woods, silent and sure. She would not lead them astray. At one point they stopped dead, and Shiun gestured them into a crouch. Lauren looked around for a reason, and then she saw two forms moving a little bit below them on the ridge. They wore the green cloaks of Yerans, and they appeared to be eating. Shiun turned to Lauren and leaned close, whispering into her ear. "Do we remove them now?" Lauren blinked at her. "Remove?" Naya pressed forwards, her breath hot on Lauren's cheek. "We may have to escape at great speed. Every guard we kill on the way in is one we will not have to fight on the way out." "No," said Lauren. "When are the patrols replaced? Do you know?" Shiun shook her head. "Then we could raise the alarm while we are still inside and not even know it. The family Yerin prides themselves on not killing needlessly. We should endeavor to do the same." Shiun glanced over Lauren's shoulder. From the corner of her eye, Lauren saw Naya shrug. Shiun turned away without a word and pressed on. The gray had lightened considerably when they reached the base of Uwamba's sudden cliffs. Dawn's approach filled them all with urgency.
I gotta use the restroom real quick. That coffee hits different. Opa! Hello.
I love you.
You going?
Going down, down.
In an earlier round.
Going down swinging.
And Sugar, we're going down swinging.
I'll be number 1 in the bullet.
I'll be a number 1 with a bullet.
Cock it and pull it.
A loaded gun complex. Cock it and pull it.
Isn't that the name of the song even? Isn't it called?
No, it's called Sugar, We're Going Down.
Oh. Going down, down. I love getting things wrong and having you correct me.
You do?
I do.
That's the bottom in you.
Because you get so irritated.
I do not.
You do. You're like...
Sometimes I do.
Actually.
Sometimes I do. It's when you state incorrect things with tremendous confidence and authority.
Sometimes I double down, though, just because I'm enjoying...
I know.
I love you.
Standing there being all like... Well, the truth is that in Lost, they were dead the whole time.
They were.
If you don't get the fuck out...
They were dead the whole time.
They were not.
They were in purgatory.
They were not! The show is very explicit about this.
Well, then, what was the whole thing with the island?
I am writing. It's work time. We've had this conversation so many times.
They were dead the whole time.
If you don't get the fuck out.
Have a good day at work.
I will.
I love you.
Love you too. Are you coming home for lunch?
No.
Okay. Ugh.
The route up looked to be a difficult one, but Lauren knew from long experience that climbing up would be much easier than climbing down. Their path began to wind back and forth, and Shiun would pause every few moments to check that the rocks gave her another path up. But then they reached the top of the slope, and it turned into a sheer wall at least 30 paces high. "Where do we go from here?" said Lauren. "Up," said Shiun, arching an eyebrow. "That is why you brought me," Weeth said, smiling. She stepped forwards and pulled off her leather gloves. Her eyes began to glow. "I may not be much of an alchemist, but I am an alchemist." She put forth her hand at about the height of her knee, and her fingers sank into the rock like it was made of water. Soon she had carved a little depression there, and she placed her foot inside it. She made another for the other foot, and then she reached up to create her handholds. Hand over hand and foot over foot, she began to climb, creating new handholds each time. "Sky above," whispered Jem. "I would have given much to have known a girl like her when I was the best thief in Cabris." Naya snorted. "I will go next," she growled. "I will follow," said Lauren. "Then Jem, Chet, and Shiun. You can cover our rear best with the bow." Shiun nodded. Naya was already climbing up just behind Weeth, gripping each handhold almost as soon as the alchemist's foot left it. Lauren came after her as soon as there was room, and soon the whole group was on the cliff face, making their way slowly up, like ants, making their way slowly up, like ants ascending the leg of a table. The sun rose at last while they were halfway up, and eastern light poured upon them from the left. Lauren paused for a moment to look back down. Yawamba's little valley was in view, but nothing beyond, for the mountains blocked the landscape from sight. It was the very reason Yawamba was so well hidden. She could not see any guards from her vantage point, and she hoped that none looked their way.
That's foreshadowing, motherfucker.
for surely they could not miss the sight of 5 small figures crawling their way up the light gray stone of the cliff. A wind had begun to blow. Lauren shivered and reached up for the next handhold. Just then, Naya's foot slipped from the wall. She gave a grunt as she slid down, reaching desperately for something to hold on to. With no time to think, Lauren braced her feet and reached up to try to halt Naya's fall. It did little to slow her, but Naya gripped a handhold in time, stopping with a jolt. Lauren realized suddenly that her hand was on Naya's rear.
I'm pretty sure we have a command like that.
The mystic looked down at her with a savage grin. Time for that later, Nightblade. We are working. Get on with it, said Lauren, removing her hand. She looked down towards Chet, trying to send him a silent apology. He rolled his eyes and shook his head. She hoped that meant he was not upset. Looking up again, she realized they had finally neared the top. Weeth was already out of sight over the wall, and Naya was scrambling over as well. They all quickened their pace, Lauren nearly leaping from handhold to handhold, and Jem following so fast that his fingers scraped on her boot more than once. But just before she reached the lip, Lauren heard a muffled cry and the scuff of leather boots on stone. We are discovered, she thought. A moment's panic seized her as she wondered if she should keep going. But then she realized Weeth and Naya were in danger, and she lunged up, only to recoil again as a body sailed over her head and fell into the open air. She caught a glance of it, and saw Weeth's pale face, her red hair fluttering, bone jutting from her neck. In silence the mystic fell, and in silence struck the rocks far, far below, too far away to hear the impact. For a moment, horror froze them all. Then Lauren vaulted over the top of the wall to land on the rampart just beyond. Naya was there, kneeling over the body of a Yeren guard. The blade of her knife was still buried in the woman's throat. Naya looked up at Lauren, her eyes wide with grief. She came. She surprised us. Weeth did not see her, and... The words died in her throat, and Lauren could only stare. Lauren, her eyes wide with grief. She came. She surprised us. She came. She surprised us. Weeth did not see her, and... The words died in her throat, and Lauren could only stare. Slowly she turned to the top of the wall again, her breath catching in her throat, as the others came over one by one and joined her in silence.
Chapter 33 done. No, come on. What's happening? What's wrong with chapter 32?
Chapter 34. After a long moment of mourning, Shiun broke the quiet. The sun is up. We are far too exposed here. Yes, said Naya. She wiped something, sweat or tears, from her eye. Yes, said Naya. She wiped something, sweat or tears, from her eyes with the back of one hand, while the other wiped her knife clean on the dead guard's cloak. Help me get her out of sight. We have no time to find a hiding place, said Shiun. She looked at the corpse disdainfully. Throw her over the wall, where she may join Weath in death. Naya nodded, and together the two of them lifted the guard to toss her into the open air. There was a blood stain on the floor, but that could not be helped. Chet and Jem still sat where they had climbed up. Chet stared blankly in the direction Weath had fallen. Chet, whispered Lauren. His head jerked towards her. Come. The boy edged forward slowly. There was an inner wall opposite the ramparts behind which Lauren and the others had ducked, and now Shiun poked her head over it, looking about. When she crouched again, she spoke to Lauren and Naya. I cannot see very well, for the wall blocks vision, but I see only another half-dozen Yarns atop it. That is a light guard, for I would guess that the wall is many hundreds of paces long. Below us, the courtyard is entirely empty. If we are fortunate, they will not notice this one missing for a long while. How can you think we are fortunate when Weath is dead? Said Chet harshly. Chet, said Lauren, meeting his gaze. He lasted only a moment before looking away. Go on, Shiun. But Naya spoke first. We should leave one lookout here, and the rest of us will enter Yawamba. We will find Damaris and bring her up, then carry her down the way we came. Carry her down the cliff, said Lauren. How can we manage that? I have rope, said Shiun, patting a large leather pack that hung at her hip. We can bind her and gag her, and with one on the ground to guide her descent, the rest of us may lower her down. Good enough, said Naya. Chet will remain here, while the rest of us...
I did not watch the show, so I can't seem to sing the theme song a cappella, sadly. The audio proofing goes well. However, I do kind of suddenly now want to do a crossover between Carmen Sandiego and Spy Kids. Good morning, Gumshoes. We received a tip that Carmen Sandiego is going to steal the only place in the world that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space! I'm probably the only person who thinks that's funny. But I fucking love it so much.
Good enough, said Naya. Chet will remain here, while the rest of us... No, said Chet. I will go with Lauren. Naya glared, but Shiun nodded in agreement. I will remain. The boy only came to keep her safe, and he is no warrior. He will be useless here if he is discovered. That is why he should not be here at all, snarled Naya. But be here at all.
That click, though. Holy shit. Ooh, it's a big click.
Not be here at all, snarled Naya.
I took too much click out. Maybe if we just do this click?
At all.
There we go.
He should not be here at all, snarled Naya. But very well. If we are resigned to this foolishness, then let us carry it out. With Shiun remaining behind, Naya led the rest of them down a stairway and into the empty courtyard. Not far from the bottom of the steps was a door. Naya paused there for only a moment, pressing her ear to the wood to listen. Then she pushed it open and stepped through, with Lauren only a pace behind her, and Chet and Jem at her heels. They were at the top of yet another staircase landing, except that this one descended to both the left and right. Both directions turned almost immediately, deeper into the mountain. Lauren ran down to the corner of the one on the left and saw that it turned away from the other. "This one turns to the right, and this one to the left," said Chet, who had gone in the other direction. "Two paths in two directions, but which to take?" Lauren thought hard. Yawamba was a fortress built from a mountain shaped like an arrowhead. Yes, an arrowhead or the prow of a ship. And on a ship, where did the captain reside? Always their quarters were towards the rear, or in this case, deeper into the mountains. "This way," she said. "How do you know?" said Chet. "It is a guess, but I think it is a good one. We can argue about it if you like." He grimaced, but Naya ran down the steps after Lauren. "Listen to her. If she says she knows where to find Damaris, I believe her." She vanished almost at once around the corner and was lost from sight. Chet and Jem ran up to Lauren, and Chet's face was full of concern. "Did you see this in your dreams as well?" "No," said Lauren. "It is truly a guess, and my dreams do not show me the future." "They have guided us well enough so far," said Jem. "We would not be here without them." "They are—" She stopped short. Chet's corpse flashed in her mind, and Jem's madness. "I know nothing of this place. I only think that we will find Damaris in its deepest, darkest hole. Now let us hurry, for Naya has already left us behind." They took the steps 2 at a time until they caught the mystic. She had paused where the stairs ended, opening into a hallway that branched left and right while also running straight ahead. Torches lit the place, just as they lit the stairwell. Naya glanced over her shoulder. "Nightblade?" "Straight ahead," said Lauren.
Later, Lady Temeraire.
The craftsmanship of the fortress was nothing so opulent as the High King's palace, and yet in its own way it seemed grander, more powerful. There were some pillars and beams that looked as though they had been brought here, but much of it was carved out of the rock of the mountain itself, and they did not appear to have taken much effort to make it beautiful. It was as though whoever built Yawamba had done so long before the decorative refinement that gave birth to the seat. The stronghold had a sense of lurking, of ominous presence and malice, a long-forgotten and long-sleeping threat that only waited for the right time to wake and sweep all its enemies away into the darkness below the world. The menace weighed more heavily on them the deeper they drove. The halls all turned exactly left and right, so that Lauren was able to remember the way she was going easily enough, and led them always west, deeper into the heart of the Great Rocks. But all the while they never saw another soul, nor any sign of one, save for the lit torches on the walls. But those made the air oppressively hot and stuffy besides, so that soon they were huffing and wheezing, even though they were not running. "It is like being wrapped in a blanket on a summer day," said Chet, his forehead glistening with sweat. "Where are they?" growled Naya. She stopped and ducked through the open doorway of some of the rooms as they passed. "There are tables in some of these, and dishes, and weapons in others. But where are the people?" "Mayhap they heard us coming," said Jem. "Mayhap they fled. They must have heard I was with you." But even his customary bravado could not withstand the creeping silence, and his smile faltered. "Hush," said Lauren, stopping suddenly. They all froze where they stood. Lauren listened harder, and then she heard it again, the clink of metal on pottery. She turned to the rest of them. "A kitchen?" "Food," said Jem, licking his lips. "Be silent, Jem." "I do not smell anything," said Naya. "I think sound carries farther in this place than scent," said Lauren. "And worse, I cannot tell where the sound came from." "Then what do you propose to do?" "Press on, only be more careful, now that we know others are near." They moved slower after that, careful to let each step fall silently. And then, at long last, they heard a sound. Shuffling footsteps, the sound of soft leather on stone, and moving towards them from the right. Lauren pointed to one of the rooms, and they lunged through the open doorway to hide themselves on either side of it. Lauren risked leaning out slightly to look back into the hall. A young woman in a plain brown dress, her skin as dark as night, walked past them. She carried a broad silver tray in 2 hands, and upon the tray were several platters of food with gold covers. Naya looked at Lauren after the girl passed. "Did you see it?" "I did," said Lauren. "Fancy food for fancy people. Let us follow our little songbird." They waited until the girl had turned the next corner out of sight, and then ran after her. 2 more hallways they followed her, until she rounded the final corner and ducked into the first doorway in the hallway there. Peeking around the corner, Lauren saw a guard at the door. She looked to Naya. The mystic pounced, silent as a striking wolf. Her hand caught the guard by the throat, choking his cry of alarm to silence. Her dagger was in her hand, and Lauren quailed, but Naya only brought the pommel crashing into his temple, and he collapsed. Lauren ran past them both and into the room, where the servant stood looking at the door, her eyes wide with alarm. When she saw Lauren, she tried to scream, but Lauren covered her mouth with a hand and seized the tray to keep it from falling. Chet took it from her and set it on the ground while Lauren pressed the girl back into the wall. "Silence! Be silent," said Lauren. "We will not hurt you." But the girl's gaze went over Lauren's shoulder, and she...
A week riding in a hotel sounds amazing. One of these days I need to really treat myself to something like that. Just find a little Airbnb, even just for a weekend. You know what I mean? Just go be alone for a weekend. And write. God, that sounds amazing. Oh.
But the girl's gaze went over Lauren's shoulder, and she screamed into the hand that kept her quiet. Lauren turned to see that Naya had dragged the guard into the room and, now that he was out of the hallway, was slitting his throat with her hunting knife.
Incredible, Vale.
Was slitting his throat with her hunting knife. "Naya!" cried Lauren in a harsh rasp. The woman glared up at her. "Everyone I kill now is one I will not have to fight when I escape. I say that for myself, since it seems plain you will not fight at all." "I will not kill," said Lauren. "Darkness take you, Naya. Get into the hallway and keep watch. Warn us if you hear anyone coming." Naya's nostrils flared, but she did as she was bid. Lauren turned back to the girl and shook her by the shoulder to get her attention. "Where are you taking this food? I am removing my hand so that you may talk. Do not scream." Cautiously, she lifted her hand, no more than a finger's breadth from the girl's lips. But the girl shook her head. "I will tell you nothing." Lauren sighed. "Tell us, girl. Do not make this difficult." "Who are you? What do you want? Why did you kill him?" Glancing over her shoulder at the dead guard, Lauren remembered what Uzo had told them in Dahab. The Yarans were family, and none but the family were allowed inside. Doubtless the guard was some cousin of the girl's. She cursed Naya again in her mind. "My companion killed him because she is a mad woman," said Lauren. "We are seeking someone. Help us find her, and you will not be harmed. I swear it. But if we take too long in our conversation here, well, my companion will grow impatient, and then she will speak with you herself." Fresh terror filled the girl's eyes. "I am only a servant. I know nothing of the stronghold." "I would wager you know enough. Where are all the soldiers stationed?" The girl only shook her head. Lauren glanced back over her shoulder. "Jim, fetch Naya." "No!" cried the girl. No, please. The soldiers are all in the eastern chambers of the stronghold, far from here." "And who resides here?" said Lauren. She looked all around, desperate for some escape, but there was none. "The wealthier members of the family, the caravan heads and accountants, the higher scions." To whom do you bring this food? The girl's throat bobbed up and down as she swallowed. The lady of the fortress. Is it Damaris? Though the girl did not answer, her eyes grew wider with fear, and her skin went a shade paler. It was all the answer Lauren needed. But there is no one in this room, said Lauren. Where is she? How did you mean to bring the food to her? Jem ran up beside them, where there was a small door built into the wall. He turned the latch and opened it outwards into the room. This way, I would wager. Chet pressed in behind him, and Lauren leaned over to look. There was a small wooden platform there, affixed to a rope that ran up and down in the pitch blackness beyond. What is it? Said Chet. I think... Jem leaned in and pulled on one of the ropes. The wooden platform moved down slightly. Moved down slightly. Yes, I think this is some device that brings things up and down in the fortress. If the kitchens are up on this level, this would be how they send food down to those on the lower levels. She is below us then, said Lauren, focusing on the girl once more. How many floors down? Please, no, said the girl. You cannot reach her. She is well guarded, and if it is known that I helped you... They heard footsteps at the door, and Naya reappeared in it. What is taking so long? She snarled. Will she not speak? Give her to me. Lauren turned back to the girl and raised her brows. 15? Squeaked the girl. Damaris is 15 floors down. You have done well, said Lauren. Then she shoved the girl back so that her head slammed into the wall. She fell unconscious at once, and Lauren caught her before she reached the floor.
Chapter 34 done. Let's see how long chapter 35 is. I might not have it in me to do it. $14 minutes? No. I can get ready for it, though. Okay. Bada boom. Well, that'll be it for me today. And I will be throwing a raid at... Whose face do we want to fling this raid directly into? Let's raid Fariha. She's just hanging out and chatting. Fariha's super cool. Another queer online content creator who we love. Give her a hello from me. Hang out as she chats and possibly plays some video games. She's quite good at the Overwatch. Is what I frequently see her playing, although she appears to be just chatting at the moment. I have one more hour of catch-up to do. So I'm probably going to do that tonight. I'm going to try and do it before I do bedtime with the family, because I need to go to bed on time tonight because I've been pushing myself a little too hard and I'm exhausted. So, if you're around for an evening stream, I hope to see you. If not, I will be here tomorrow. Oh God, Twitch, not yet. I will be here early again tomorrow morning. And hopefully we just keep... I want to push back up to the point of being ahead of schedule. So hopefully tomorrow we can start that process happening. But thanks y'all for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye.
I feel that little fear, that little twinge of fear. Little twinge of fear that's like, oh, that's saying to me, nobody wants to hear this, or like, you're oversharing way too much, or all that sort of stuff. But oh my goodness, VlogaNovel! Thank you so much for the raid. Welcome to the stream. Hello, how was your stream today? Hello, what are you guys up to? Hiya. And Prismatic Lily, thank you so much for the 2 years of support as well. Welcome back to the cast. Thank you. Have you seen any of Brene Brown's podcast episodes? They're really nice and she has some really cool guests. I have not. I have not gotten into the game of podcasts yet. I still don't know where I go to listen to them. Apparently it's Spotify or something like that. Maybe. Anyone who claims to have their shit together is a liar and cannot be trusted. Exactly. Banish the thought. Vulnerability isn't necessarily the word. I think more so authenticity. Yeah, authenticity is hard, right? Because I feel like vulnerability can be more tailored than authenticity. I don't know how true that is. I had to think about that one for a moment. Do-do-do-do-do-ba-dum-bum-ba-da-dum. Too long I was being scared of making mistakes that I even won't do much at all. Yeah, there's like this weird anxiety I have when it comes to social media. Sometimes of being like, okay, like I can't put out anything that doesn't contribute to the brand, or it doesn't contribute to, you know, the content. And it's like, I don't have to be like that. I really don't have to be like that. I can just, you know, post thoughts, and they don't have to get, you know, 300 likes for it to have been worthwhile. You know, sometimes I should just share for the sake of sharing. Yeah. Oh, I need to stop clearing my throat. Oh my goodness. Let's see. So, stream was great, thanks. Ooh, coming to the tail end of editing this audiobook. It must feel so great to be getting to the end points of a project like that. Yeah, that's amazing. That must be so much recording, but I'm sure you've learned a lot through the process, so that's awesome. we talked about a lot of things, how we were brought up, and some views on our parents, and some events we've seen from different sides. One example was the stroke my mom had when I was doing exams in engineering school. My sister still lived at home. Oh my gosh. That sounds like a really good conversation you guys had. And I'm glad you were able to swap some perspectives on that sort of thing. It's always so hard. It's always so hard growing up not quite super close with your sibling, and I relate with that. Yeah, like I didn't meet my sister until I was like 16, and we're biologically related, so it makes it much weirder. But maybe I like to think that maybe one day we'll reconnect and we'll get to swap stories about how our upbringings were different, and how, yeah. It was awesome. She sent me a text today. We should do more of that in the future. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Future connection. Yes. I think, oh god. Yeah, it's wild how you can grow up under the same roof and grow up with like the same figureheads in your life, but then have wildly different experiences of the whole thing, right? Like, man, growing up, families are so complicated. It's wild. Aren't you the OG Afara Overwatch player from many years ago? Oh my gosh! Falmer! Perhaps? Hello? It's good to see you. Hello. Yes, that was me. And ooh, that could lead into a fun conversation. Hang on, I'm gonna make a little note to go there in a bit. But alright. Got that. Also part of a much large project including all my audiobooks. I have, oh my gosh, yeah. Awesome. I have no real siblings and 3 chosen siblings, and that dynamic can be so weird. Oh, that's wild. Wait, crazy story about biological. Wait, you have 2 sisters that don't even know you